Hi there, a very warm welcome to this live Q&A for the MSc in Gender History and the new online MSc in Global Gender History. My name is Dr. Tanya Cheadle. I am the convener of both programs, and I am delighted to welcome with me two of our students. Moira, can I hand over to you first for an introduction?
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Moira. I am a student in the Masters of Gender History program, and I am focusing on, science fiction, fantasy, and gaming history specifically. Yeah, that's me. Hannah?
Hi, thanks, Moira. I'm Hannah Speed. I'm currently studying part-time my first year of a history PhD, but last year I did the Gender History MSc course here too, and I did that full-time. I'm generally interested in sort of women's political activism in late 19th and early 20th century Britain.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. How I thought we'd run this is first I'm going to give a brief introduction to both programs. So you'll find details available. They both have quite detailed web pages for both the master's programs. But I'm going to just provide a brief introduction to how they function, basically their structures. And then we will open it up to the Q&A. And if there are no particular questions that you want addressed, we have a range of different aspects of the programme, of career progression, and also just generally of sort of life in Glasgow, what it feels like to come to Glasgow and study on the programme, or indeed to take our new online course. So firstly, just to introduce you to the in-person MSc in Gender History. This has been running for several years now out of the Centre for Gender History. So we have a large number of gender historians working here at Glasgow across a number of disciplines, actually. And together we form the Centre for Gender History, which is a research centre, but also provides a unique research community for staff and students working on different aspects of gender history. So both programmes are run out of the centre. The first programme, the MSc in Gender History, is an in-person on-campus programme. And like both, it's a 180 credit course, and what that means in practice is that you will take 3 core courses which you're obliged to take, which are compulsory, and then you'll choose 3 optional modules, and then at the end, the capstone project of the programme is your dissertation. So firstly, to talk about the core courses, the first core course that you'll encounter in semester 1 is Gender, Politics and Power. And this is the introduction to theory. Now, in gender history, we take theory from a variety of disciplines, from sociology, from philosophy, from politics. And this is a team talk course, so we draw on that broad-ranging expertise that we have within the centre here. And each week, we both introduce you to a different concept that we use in gender history, like, for example, masculinities or patriarchy or intersectionality. And then we look at how gender historians have applied this in practice. And so both those 2 elements of the course are really fundamental. So it's not just necessarily a theory course, it's also looking at how we use that theory to really make our analyses stronger, more acute. So that's Gender, Politics and Power, and we take that, as I say, in semester 1. And then in semester 2, you take Gender History Concepts. And this is a course which introduces you to a range of texts, very broadly defined. So we'll introduce things like material culture, film, comics. It's a really wide variety of texts. And again, it's team taught, so introducing you to other members of that interdisciplinary teaching team. And alongside that, you will take a historical skills course. So that will help you with aspects like archival research and translating your research to perhaps different public audiences. So that's the 3 core courses, and then you'll make a selection from a really wide range of optional courses that we have available here at Glasgow, and more on those in a minute. And then at the end of the programme, you will take your dissertation. Now, some students arrive at Glasgow knowing exactly what they want to do for their dissertation. I would say they are in a minority. Many just come here and are looking to experience the full range of expertise that we have here, and to have conversations, discussions, to obviously to learn during their courses, and from that to get a better sense of what they might like to specialise in. And if you can hear, I don't know whether you can hear the rain, but it started thundering down with rain here in Glasgow. So apologies if that's a bit loud for you. So in terms of the dissertations, we provide you with lots of support in reaching that decision. You'll get a workshop at the end of semester 1, and then in semester 2, you'll be encouraged to have meetings with potential supervisors. So, and it's through those discussions with the tutors and with your fellow students that usually an idea starts to come into focus. So that the idea is that after the Easter break, you're ready to submit your proposal and to really start work researching your topic. So in a nutshell, that's the on-campus MSc in Gender History. And then we're really excited this year to launch our new online MSc in Global Gender History. So this is a fully online programme. And whilst it draws from the same concepts, sort of theories, and themes, topics that we use for our on-campus programme, the emphasis is slightly different. We are looking at public histories broadly conceived, and at how gender history is used in efforts to gender, to queer, to decolonize aspects, public history spheres such as museums, galleries, community history projects. Those sorts of sort of public-facing uses, if you like, applications of gender history. So we have 2 core courses for that programme. In semester 1, you'll take Gender History Applied. So it's looking at exactly those sort of initiatives. And then in semester 2, you'll take Gender History Concepts, which is that theory course, which really provides you with the vocabulary, the sort of theoretical and conceptual vocabulary that you'll need to become a gender historian. And then you'll have 4 optional courses where you can draw from the range of courses available here, and you will end with your dissertation. So just to give you a sense of the types of optional courses we have available here at Glasgow. So launching this year, we are very excited to have a new course which has been co-created with the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, called American Women's History at the Smithsonian. And that uses a material culture approach. So it's using the objects at the museum to explore the history of modern American women's history. So that launches this year. We also have courses on, let me just get my list. We have courses on seeking refuge from slavery, taught by Dr. Christine White, looking at enslaved resistance from Africa to the Americas. We have a new course convened by Professor Maud Bracker, looking at reproductive rights and justice, so historical approaches. We have a course on gender care and capitalism, which will be taught by Dr. Alex Shepherd. I'm launching a new course on occultism and esotericism in the modern period, and how ideas of gender and sexuality are implicated in that. So you can see it's in terms of topics, periods, approaches, there's a real diversity there. Now that course list is provisional just now, but it will be finalised as we sort of progress through the summer, and probably about sometime in July, August, you'll get a full course programme, and you'll be able to start making those choices. Okay, I think that's pretty much it in terms of the basic structure and content of the courses. So I am going to throw this over to you now and see if there are any questions that you have for us. So I have been sent one set of questions in advance, so it's probably a good idea to address those first. And then if there are no questions from the audience, as I say, we've got several topics that we can discuss that will hopefully be useful to you. So we have had a set of questions in from Ruth. I'm not sure if you're here with us, Ruth, but thank you very much for your questions. And these all relate to the new online Masters in Global Gender History. So Ruth is asking quite practical questions. Do we get a complete online timetable before the course starts? What if there are issues with getting online? Will lectures be recorded? So just generally, the online program has been specifically designed to be flexible and for people with pre-existing work and caring responsibilities, so that the course materials, you will be able to access the vast majority of the course materials anytime. So in terms of getting an online timetable before the course starts, absolutely. So you will enroll for all of your courses. You will make the choices for that year right at the beginning of the academic year, so at the beginning of September. And that will provide you with your timetable. So you will know exactly when your online seminars are. Those online seminars, with the permission of, so there will usually be weekly online seminars, and with the permission of all the students involved, they will be recorded and made available on the Moodle for you to review. However, I would also say that if you can't attend the seminars, there are other ways of engaging with the course, and that's really key to a successful online course. So for a start, there will be what we call asynchronous resources, things like pre-recorded lectures that you can watch, readings, videos, perhaps podcasts, a range of different learning materials that you will be able to access aside from the seminars. And then critically, there will also be discussion forums, which will provide sort of a parallel space to the live seminars for you to be able to interact with your tutors and with your fellow students. How easy will it be to request one-to-ones with our lecturers? I mean, very straightforward answer, really easy. So there will be online office hours every week, and office hours are just basically times when lecturers are available to their students. So there will be that time weekly, but in any case, you can just email your lecturers and they'll be very happy to arrange an online meeting with you. And then, will my student card be sent to me? That's a question for admissions, so do email them, or you can email me and I'll find out that answer for you. But I'm presuming as soon as you register, you'll be sent all of the relevant details that you need to be able to access the Moodles. So the Moodles are Glasgow's online learning environment. So it's through these Moodles that you will have access to all of your course materials. Okay, so that was the questions that I had been sent, that I was sent in advance. And I would say as well, just after this Q&A, if you do still have questions, do just please feel free to email me and I will endeavour to answer any further questions that you might have. Okay, so I can't see any other questions coming up just now. So I think it's probably a good idea just to open up the discussion and to get some insight from Moira and Hannah in terms of the student perspective on studying the MSc in gender history here. Okay, so I mentioned dissertations in my summary of the course. Should we start there, start at the end? And this will be particularly relevant for Moira because you are right in the thick of it at the moment, aren't you, Moira? So can you tell us a bit about your topic and how you ended up studying it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of funny the way that I actually ended up working on my dissertation topic was, I took a little bit of a gap after finishing my undergraduate because of the pandemic. And then, when I came back, I was like, well, maybe I should do something fresh and do something totally different. And I ended up kind of just doing more of the same, but, creature of habit. So I'm working on a set of 1970s science fiction and gaming magazines, and I'm really interested in the ways that the community kind of formed around this magazine as it was created and as it went on, how it relates to other gaming communities, and mostly how is masculinity formulated or created within this community, and where do women get to basically have their say. And part of the reason why I'm interested in this, I came about it because my undergraduate research was in anthropology. I was really interested in gaming communities as they are contemporarily, I guess, manifesting. So I was really interested in all of the ideas of like, how do people interact now? And there's, you might know, a lot of misogyny in a lot of the contemporary communities. And I think a lot of the times that the idea was that kind of just always was there, and that, you know, it's always been like that. And so I kind of got thinking, I can't just presume, I can't just assume that that's true. I want to actually look at artifacts. And so by switching from anthropology to history, even though it's really recent history, using the same tools and methodologies that you would use even for more ancient history or modern history, I was able to kind of, I've been able to recently start looking at actual evidence and trying to see, is it really like we think that it is, or are we presuming that we know something that isn't really there? So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
And so how did you've ended up doing a topic that you were interested in prior to coming on the Masters. Was it quite a daunting process ending up with the topic that you've ended up with?
I think what was mostly daunting about it was this idea that I had to pressure myself to do something completely new that I had no idea about. You know, going from my undergraduate to my master's, I kind of had this idea like, this is a new degree. I'm doing a new type of study. I have to do something completely new. And then realizing that actually taking new methodologies and applying it to the things that I already like and know it made perfect sense. There's no reason why I can't work interdisciplinarily. And I think that was one of the most daunting things to get over, was kind of realizing that all of these things do work in harmony together, and I don't have to lose part of myself to gain something new.
Yeah, I think you touched on something that's a real feature, I guess, of the master's program, is that many of the students come from different disciplines, and that actually that interdisciplinary way of working is seen as a real strength, because gender history as a discipline more broadly is, has always drawn across, from a wide variety of fields. So you're getting some questions there, I think, in the chat. Lindsay's asking whether you're an online student. So the new online program launches this September. So both Moira and Hannah have been in person on campus.
I did have one class that was an online class, though. So if you have any questions particularly about that, I did take one course that was exclusively Zoom, and I can maybe help with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Hannah, you have to cast your mind back a little bit, because you're now undertaking your doctoral research. But can you remember the process of choosing your master's dissertation?
So I didn't kind of come into the master's with like a fixed idea of what I wanted to do. I knew that I knew from my sort of undergraduate, I liked this like 19th, 20th century period. I liked kind of women's political history. And I also knew that I liked doing things around autobiographical writing, things like that. And then because of the nature of PhDs, I'd already started thinking about my PhD project as well. So the master's seemed like a good opportunity to just like kind of, what do I want to do kind of purely out of interest, and to do something new, but that can also kind of fill some gaps in my knowledge. And then the kind of course structure really helped me to develop it. So as part of gender politics and power, I did an assessment on labour history, and that was kind of an area I hadn't massively looked at before. I found that kind of really interesting, thinking about kind of how can we sort of see working class voices in the past that like might not come through as clearly in some sources as in others. And then we had, in the historical skills course, we had a session where we kind of brainstorming ideas for dissertations. And just by chance, in the sort of 5-minute brainstorm of that, I started thinking about this dissertation idea and then just ran with it. So I ended up looking at women readers' letters to the Labour and Socialist press in the early 20th century, which is a bit of a mouthful, but kind of similar to you, Moira, looking at like how kind of these new newspapers created communities and how women contributed to that. And that was really kind of about, I wanted to kind of look at letters and build my skills with looking at letters at sources, but still kind of keep in a familiar area. And also it's quite nice kind of being in Glasgow to use some of those sort of British sources. There were some sources at Glasgow Mitchell Library, so it was quite nice to kind of use local sources as well. So it just sort of developed over the course of the first term or so.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Hannah. Lindsay's just come back, Moira, to ask if you could speak to the international experience.
Yeah, I absolutely can. And we won't miss that question in the middle, Azrael.
No,
So
absolutely.
but just to jump back to Lindsay, absolutely, I can speak a little bit to the international experience. So I come from the States, and it definitely is a little bit daunting and stressful at first to, cover all of the paperwork and visas and everything that comes with being an international student. I am somebody that is really, really bad at navigating websites and paperwork and all of that sort of thing. It stresses me out. I'm not very good at it. Read everything. Make sure you're checking your emails. The university will set you off on the right foot to find the things that you need. Just make sure you're looking out for yourself by reading all of the fine print, checking everything. It does get a little bit stressful to go through all of that, but like if I can do it, then I think really anybody can. Now, as an international student, like coming here and learning the city, I would say I've met so many other international students, and immediately arriving here, everyone wants to make friends. So you aren't going to be like showing up and everybody's already got their friends with everybody else, right? Like we're all in a master's program. It's at most 2 years. For most people, it's going to be 1 year. You're walking into a room of people that all want to make friends with you immediately. They all want to know what you're thinking and they want to tell you about what they're thinking. So if the concern of being an international student is that you're going to be like ostracized for being from somewhere else, absolutely not. Everyone wants to know all about your experiences. They want to know what you think about here. They want to take you places. It's a really easy city to get around. There's a lot going on. And I really don't think you'll have any struggles being here. It's once you get past all that paperwork at the beginning, you will definitely find yourself happy here.
So usually around half the students on the master's program are international students. I'd say at the moment, student numbers are around sort of 15 to 20 in the cohort for each year. So that's a really nice number. You'll get to know everyone essentially within your year. So there'll be students taking it full-time over a year and part-time over 2 years. But as Moira says, you'll all be taking that core Gender, Politics and Power. If you're taking the on-campus masters, you'll all be taking that core course at the same time, Mondays 10 till 12 in your seminars. So that's a great time for you to make friends. We also organise a sort of extracurricular programme of activities designed to get you out and about in Glasgow, to get you familiar with the city, and for you to start thinking about gendered analyses sort of beyond the classroom. So, in museums, libraries, galleries, those sorts of spaces. Yes, as Moira says, I think you should very, very quickly find your feet within Glasgow. And Glasgow is a great city.
Yeah. It really is.
Okay, Azrael, thank you for your really important question. So Azrael asks, within the centre and its networks, are there specific supports to protect and encourage trans scholarship, especially considering how things have been more dangerous for us these days? So I'd like to respond to this question in 2 ways. I mean, firstly, there'll be university support systems in terms of, the LGBTQ+ network for students. At the centre, is sort of intellectually, I wouldn't say we offer a specific course on trans histories, but they are starting, the sort of trans scholarship is starting to become embedded within gender history more broadly, as it is in the discipline itself. So within Gender, Politics and Power, I teach a week on gender binaries and trans approaches, and I also incorporate some of there's a real wave of trans histories currently being published, and I incorporate those works into my teaching. So I would hope that both in terms of sort of the university support, but also intellectually as well within the centre, that we certainly model ourselves to be, a very sort of inclusive and welcoming space for all our students. So I hope that's been reassuring. But if you want sort of details on more specific resources, then do just email me and I can compile those for you, ahead of your arrival. Okay. So fantastic. We've got a link there to the student LGBTQ+ group. Okay, so let's move on to other topics. We've talked about the dissertation. I wondered if either of you would like to talk about optional courses that you've taken at Glasgow and what you got out of them. Perhaps we start with Hannah this time.
Yep, great. I had such good optional courses. I took, as you already mentioned, Tanya, I took Seeking Refuge from Slavery, which is kind of a real research strength at Glasgow. We have the Beniba Centre for Slavery Studies, and just to sort of reassure people, with any topic on the optional courses, slavery was not something that I'd like massively done at undergraduate or anything, but it was like very easy to get up to speed, really great teaching. So that was kind of a whole fascinating new option. I also took a course called Transnational Constructions of Gender, and that's actually run out of the comparative literature program. So you can like take a course from a sort of non-history program, and a lot of people in our year did that. It was very enriching. My kind of PhD research has a bit of a literature element to it, so it was really good to get that sort of interdisciplinary approach, and that sort of looked at lots of kind of world literatures over time and how they had sort of approached gender in different contexts. And I also took a special topic with Tanya, actually, which was really good, which was a sort of period of more independent study, which was looking at sort of women and gender in Scotland in the long 19th, early 20th century. So there is definitely an opportunity to do a sort of complete range of different optional subjects, and they all sort of gave me like a good kind of breadth of knowledge in different places, let me kind of try new things, which I really appreciated.
Fantastic, thanks Hannah. Moira.
Yeah, absolutely. I took a couple of classes that were, you might imagine, kind of theoretically all over the place, or not theoretic, more subject. But I think that the benefit of being in this gender history program is that you get the very strong theoretical base that no matter what subject matter you're looking into, you can find ways to relate it all back to gender. I would say one of my favorite courses that I took that were, I guess, optional courses was Women in Power in Renaissance Italy. This course was absolutely wildly, I don't know, it was really amazing. Sarah Cochran, the professor that teaches it, is so knowledgeable and passionate about everything that it made me wish that I had never had any other ideas of things that I wanted to do in my life, and that I could totally just like change my dissertation topic to whatever she told me she needed. It was honestly so inspirational to me that it helped me also think about ways that I could be more effective attaching my approach to history to other things and how they could work in tandem. I also took a course called The Medievalists that was particularly about Eastern European history, but what was really interesting about that course was that it kind of looked at the ways that people utilized history to kind of generate ideas of political power. And I think that, again, that one, the subject matter was interesting, but the theoretical base that it was giving me was even more useful to me, and that I still continue to use some of the resources from that course, not necessarily because I'm working on that subject at all, but because the way that it approached that subject was really helpful to me. And beyond that, I took games and gaming history, which I think makes a lot of sense because I work on games and gaming history.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Moira. And Hannah, you mentioned there a special topic, and that's just to give a few more details. that's where you basically come to an arrangement with a particular tutor. A course may not run in the area, in the subject that you want to get to grips with, but you can approach individual tutors and see if they would be amenable to running a special topic with you, where you work usually one-on-one with them on an area that's close to their own research specialism. So particularly, I think, and it sort of worked in your case, I think, Hannah, if you're applying for a PhD and there is a particular knowledge base that you really want to become familiar with, and you've already identified perhaps a supervisor that you want to work with for your PhD, then building a course that way can obviously be a really great way of getting that sort of foundational understanding that you need for your PhD. Okay, well, we have a question in from Morag. Can I ask about job prospects after this course? Absolutely, you can. So I guess as with all humanities degrees, our graduates go into a broad range of different sectors. They include policy work, working for third sector organisations, teaching, museum work. So a really broad range of different pathways after the master's programme. And I think on our website as well, we have some information on some of our alumni and where they have ended up. Of course, the master's can also be a pathway to doctoral study as well. And we have Hannah here who can perhaps speak to that specifically. So if you want to go on to do doctoral study in history, then you will need a master's. If you want to get funding for that PhD, then the deadlines for that are really quite imminent. I think it's November that you need to have your proposal for your PhD, and we will sort of assist you with that process. Yes, I wondered, Hannah, if you could perhaps tell us a little bit more about why you decided to go on to PhD study from the Masters, and what that journey looked like for you from starting the Masters to ending up now on your sort of way in terms of your doctoral journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd had a similar session to this actually before I did the Masters, and this sort of put the idea in my head that I needed to start thinking about these things. I'd been thinking about a PhD anyway because I finished my undergraduate degree and I had about 4 years between undergraduate and doing the Masters. And in that time, I was sort of thinking, I really, really miss academia. Maybe 1 year won't be enough. So that kind of, if you kind of like feeling very passionate and like, will a 1 year master's be enough? Then like maybe a PhD is a thing to think about. Yeah, Tanya very helpfully prompted us in that session that if you're thinking about it, you need to kind of start developing just some broad ideas of what you want to do around this stage, which was kind of very fun to do, and sort of started having a think about kind of reading and broad topics and things like that. And then I think the kind of the application process is long and is hard and takes a lot of time. There's like no point sort of denying that, I don't think, but found Glasgow a very supportive place to go through that application process. I applied twice before I got funding on the second time. And I found the Masters in itself very, very helpful for applying for funding. I like ended up talking a lot because I genuinely had about all the skills that I'd developed on the Masters and the different kind of breadth of courses that I'd had and how that had helped with like my kind of contextual knowledge, but also my skills. And so if you're thinking about PhD study, it genuinely will kind of build up all the sort of things you need to take that forward. And also just because the master's course is like structured to help you think about some of these things. So the historical skills course has sessions on applying for funding and applying for PhDs, and I actually did an assessment about applying for funding, which was very helpful, and also provides a really, really nice network. So I met like a lot of great lecturers who helped me talk through my ideas, or who were willing to kind of be referees for me during the application process. So yeah, I would kind of say it's a long application process, and I had to try twice, but Glasgow was like a very good community to sort of help me do that and kind of give me some of the skills I needed to start on the PhD and develop my ideas more.
Thank you, Hannah. Yes, I think it's worth mentioning that I guess because of the Centre for Gender History here, we're seen as a natural destination for doctoral work in gender history. So that's why we do have quite a good success rate in securing funding for our students. But to return, I think, to Morag's question about specifically more about careers. As I say, humanities degrees will provide you with that sort of range of really transferable skills in critical analysis, in assessing evidence, in communicating your ideas, in writing. But I wondered if I could throw this to Moira and just to ask about your thoughts on the future and what particular career you're thinking of.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a difficult question to think about because, you can have your own dreams, but it also depends on what does the workforce need from you. And so in my dream world, I would really, really like to be working with media designers, games, television or film, and really trying to approach history in a new way. I think that we have a lot of historical and historically minded media that's coming out all the time now. And I think that sometimes the approach to gender in those media, or in that media, I guess, is kind of rudimentary. I think we kind of get this idea, especially, writers and directors that really don't take a gender theory approach to history or really even a history approach to history. And sometimes they just write from a creative point of view, which is good, but having help is always better. Sometimes we'll end up with pieces of media that just kind of approach history or gender in the past as the same way that we approach gender now, or we have, again, these like really bold assumptions about women's place in the past. And it really always irks me. So in my perfect world, I would really like to be working on research teams with people creating media, historical media, to try to reform some of those thoughts for popular sources.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I just wanted to add, I guess, hearing Moira speak reminded me of something that I heard from Adele Patrick, who is the director of the Glasgow Women's Library here, who we work closely with on a number of initiatives, not least the new online master's programme. But she lectures for the new programme on feminist leadership. And she said that her goal was just to create feminist change makers, no matter where you end up, and as I say, our students will end up in a huge variety of different forms of employment, different sectors, but it's carrying that feminist sensibility and those feminist critical tools, I think, to be a feminist leader, a change maker, no matter where you are. I think that would be my goal for all our students. So thank you very much for your question, Morag. We've just got one straight hot off the press in from Amanda. Are there opportunities to work with a professor as a research assistant on their personal research? That's a really interesting question, because that is something that we have been trialing recently at honours level rather than within the master's programme. Not at present, I would say, and partly the reason for that is partly a practical one, in that if you take the master's programme full time, it's, I don't know, Hannah and Moira could perhaps attest to this. You don't have much time aside from working through your courses. It is quite an intense programme. So you'll be taking 3 courses in semester 1 and 3 in semester 2, and then you'll be working on your dissertation, which gets submitted at the beginning of September. So that doesn't leave that much time for working, with professors on their own research. That said, it's an interesting idea, and there are sort of internment opportunities advertised. So it's certainly something that we can look at. if professors did have opportunities on their projects opening up. So I wouldn't, that's certainly not a straightforward no, but it's just a bit of a sort of a caveat that we do keep you quite busy. It's not just your core learning hours, if you like, your optional and your core courses, and then your dissertation, but there's also a lot going on, basically, run by the Centre for Gender History and the university more broadly. The Centre for Gender History runs a really full programme of events. I co-direct the centre at the moment with Professor Maud Bracker. So we run a research seminar series, and this is, we usually get about 3 to 4, we run 3 to 4 seminars each semester where we invite an external or internal gender historian to the centre, and we pre-circulate a paper that they're working on. So usually a draft chapter or a journal article. We pre-circulate that, we all read it, and then we have a workshop where we talk about their ideas that they're sort of floating in this paper. And we would strongly encourage you as master's students to come to that, to expose yourself to a really broad variety of topics, methodologies. I mean, I had a student a couple of years ago who completely changed the way that they worked because they were so inspired by one of these research seminars because of the methodology that this particular professor used. So we have 4 of those each semester on a Wednesday afternoon, and they will be run hybrid. So again, whether you're online or in person, you will be able to attend. We then have our Houghton postgraduate reading group. So this is an intellectual and social space provided by our doctoral students for all postgraduate students. So again, the master's students are really strongly encouraged to come. They do put on a number of events, walking tours around the West End of Glasgow, or book swaps, as well as inviting postgraduate students from other universities to come and give talks. Again, it's that sort of supportive space for you to network with peers, but also to develop your skills in public speaking, and in just sort of sharing your ideas and your research. We also have sort of other postgraduate events. There's been sort of mini conferences and workshops run. We have our annual lecture in global gender history, where we invite a senior academic to give a sort of an extended lecture in Glasgow, and then we run a postgraduate workshop after that. So there's lots going on in the centre and at Glasgow more broadly. We have a great partnership with the Hunterian Art Gallery and Museum, which is the gallery and museum housed at the University of Glasgow. So we have events run with them. There is little spare time, I guess, if you're going to really take advantage of the opportunities that are on offer here. Moira and Hannah, I didn't know if you wanted to add to that at all. What events have you attended at that have been run by the centre or at Glasgow? And what have you enjoyed the most? Moira, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I do try to do my best to, I feel if I'm getting a degree, all of the things that come with it, everything that comes into my email inbox is also part of that degree, right? So I try my best to show up to different events of all kinds, even if they're things that I'm not really super, I want to have a little bit of interest in it, but I feel like you get something from everything. So I have gone to several of the Houghton reading group events, which are really nice because it does just kind of give you, I would almost say kind of like a cross-generational kind of attachment to people, where you're not just speaking directly to your professors, you're speaking to people that kind of are a little bit like, they're just a half step in between, where you're like, oh, you've done the things that I did, but not that long ago. And it feels really, really nice and supportive to get to talk to people that aren't just at your level, but also that are a little bit above your level, or that you're meeting maybe from across different barriers. And so I definitely would encourage folks who join this program to reach out to them and to be a part of that, because making friends with those people can be both really rewarding and really helpful. I've also gone to, I think our program has put on a couple of really lovely events. The one where you read the paper before and then you all look at it together afterwards. I find those to be really helpful as well, because it does just kind of give you a little bit more insight into other people's writing process and what goes into editing a really long piece of academic work, which I think really helps you looking forward towards your dissertation, which is huge, and it's a lot going into that. So yeah, definitely that, and just otherwise talks. There are things that are more serious, less serious, some things that are just a little bit more joyous, and some things that are a little bit more, taking notes and writing down, but all sorts of different things that just kind of keep you in the academic mindset, so that you kind of are always thinking of new ideas and generating, new thoughts about what your own work is going to do. Yeah.
You were on the gallery tour for the Afterlife of Mary exhibition, weren't you? And that's a classic example of, so we've got Dr. Stephen Reed is an expert in not only Mary Queen of Scots, but also the sort of the cultural legacy that she's left behind, and how people have engaged with her as an iconic figure since her death. And so because of that expertise, Stephen runs a course both at honours and master's level on Mary, but has worked with the Hunterian Gallery in a major new exhibition. And we were able to arrange a curator talk and a tour of the exhibition, which again was just fantastic, wasn't it?
It was really lovely. And I must say, even just with the Mary Queen of Scots course, I know several people that have taken it, and it radically changed the way they think about nobility, about femaleness and power, about all sorts of things, about Scottish history. So that course has definitely got recommendations from many, many people in my social circle. But also just being able to go into the gallery and not just look at things and read the labels, but to speak to people, to ask questions back, to talk to one another about it. I really think that that's the way that galleries are meant to be explored. I mean, having somebody to just walk you through it and to think about it. I walk slowly through galleries, and even then, I don't think I would ever be able to get as much out of it as I was going through it with the curators of the program, or of the exhibit, rather.
Yeah,
that was great.
Hannah, could you tell us a little bit more about what you've gone to see in terms of what the centre's put on?
Yeah, absolutely. Fully second everything that has been said already. And just on a very basic level, I'd also add, with the courses themselves, you very much get out as much as you put in. There are very great and thorough reading lists and videos and podcasts and other resources. You can really kind of make the most out of the courses. And then things I've particularly enjoyed. A kind of similar thing we had as a sort of extracurricular to the kind of core gender history modules. We had a session with the Hunterian where we got to kind of go into the storerooms, and the curators had got out lots of sort of prints from across about 400 years of their collections, so that we could kind of get a bit closer to the prints, see prints that weren't on display, and sort of think about how gender was being portrayed in these prints and how we might go about sort of putting them into an exhibition if we were going to do that. And just those opportunities to kind of get a bit closer to the sort of museums and archives that Glasgow had. It's really valuable and really fun and fascinating. And the other thing I'd say, which is not technically part of the university but has kind of very close links in terms of personnel and courses, is we also have Glasgow Women's Library here in Glasgow, which is just amazing. They have a big events program, always have exhibitions on. They also have an archive. They also just have a really nice space to just go and have a cup of tea and read a book. So definitely would kind of recommend making the most of them as well.
Brilliant. Always have a shout out for the Glasgow Women's Library. Sorry, Maura.
No, it's fine. That reminded me that I wanted to quickly add that you also did a great job providing us with resources with the National Library of Scotland, and hooking us up with a meetup there. That was so fantastic. The way that the staff had read what we were working on prior, they brought out some of these beautiful old tomes and had them set up it was amazing. And I would not have thought to do that on my own, even though you absolutely could go and get that library card on your own, but having it set up with the program made it that much more accessible and approachable and really inviting place. I mean, you should get your card there as soon as you get into the city, I think, but
so that's interesting in that we've been talking about careers, but one of our that workshop was set up because one of our postgraduate students works for the National Library of Scotland, and so was able to facilitate that workshop for us with the curators there. So it's all part of this sort of broader network, if you like, of gender historians, gender scholars working sort of both locally and globally, that you'll get to know, have access to if you come and join us on the programme. I've got quite a straightforward question from Amanda. What are the length requirements for the dissertation? So it's 12 to 15,000 words. I don't know how that makes you feel, Amanda, whether that might seem quite intimidating. I always advise my students just to break it down, essentially, and really what you're talking about is perhaps 3 or 4 essays with an introduction and a conclusion, and you will be given a lot of support. This may be the first, depending on what discipline you've come from. This may be your first extended piece of academic writing. Effectively, we're training you. Well, we're training you in long form writing and critical analysis, but also how to write a journal article. An academic journal article is usually around sort of 9,000 words. So this is a sort of an extended version of that. As I say, you will start talking with potential supervisors at the beginning of semester 2. You will then usually be assigned that same academic as your supervisor after Easter. And then you will have, it can be up to 5 meetings with them, basically, between April and when you submit in September. So they will provide you with the guidance that you need. They will also read through sort of a draft introduction and a draft chapter, and give you detailed feedback. So what might seem quite intimidating at this stage will get broken down. You'll be asked probably to submit a plan before you start writing. I always think it just, dissertations start really broad, and it's just this gradual sort of incremental process of narrowing down your focus, so that when you actually come to writing the dissertation, you'll have a really detailed sense of, your research questions, the focus of each chapter, the research base that you're going to be drawing on. I don't know whether you feel that's your experience, Moira, given that you're right in the middle of this process.
I mean, yeah, I do think one of the things the program has done really well is having several different, meetups, or I guess workshops, for us to talk to other doctorate students or master's students that graduated from last year, or professors like yourself, to walk through kind of what is expected, so that we kind of never forget, which is maybe a little bit looming, but I found it really good. I needed that reminder all the time to just keep thinking about it. And even over the course of just through the classes, I was always kind of thinking, like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to narrow this down? And I really do think the epiphany came to me when we were talking to some of those students that graduated last year, and one of them just brought out what she had worked on, and she said, yeah, I just found this magazine, and I noticed that no one had written on it before, and I wanted to read it all and write on it. And I was like, oh, I could do that. I could, like, it just clicked for me. I was like, I can do that. Like, that's something that I am capable of. So it was really helpful having all of those workshops, for sure.
Well, we only have 5 minutes left of the session, and I thought what might be a nice way to sort of round off our discussion would be to ask the question, what do you wish you had known before you started the course, and what advice you would give, therefore, to students starting? Hannah, could we start with you on this one?
Yes, there are a few things. I'm trying to condense them down. I think, firstly, we've just had a big discussion about it, so I won't labour the point, but really appreciate all the different things that are going on in the university, and particularly the Centre for Gender History, and go and make the most of those. It's not just the core courses. There's like a whole world of extra stuff going on that is very inspirational. I think, secondly, don't be scared by the breadth of the core courses. Definitely, I had topics that I'd never really done much kind of prior reading on before, didn't know the kind of theory behind, but they present kind of like a massive opportunity, I think, to kind of broaden your knowledge, try new things. You might never go back to studying comic books, but you will have learned a lot by doing it. So I think that's brilliant. And I think thirdly, just kind of enjoy and make the most of the community. The course is a lovely kind of community throughout the year and afterwards. So I think just enjoy that, enjoy being in Glasgow.
I would definitely say the thing that I would encourage you to, or not encourage, I guess, even just think about is it can be a little bit difficult off the bat, considering how you're going to relate to other people in your course when you're in gender history, especially, you're looking at people that study medieval history or Scottish history together, and you're like, oh, well, they all have something in common, like they study the same time or the same subject. And I think with gender history, we have that, but it looms a little under the surface because what we all have in common is theory. And I think it took a couple of months for me to kind of understand how I was supposed to talk to my peers about our research together. And I think once you kind of realize that with gender history, the theory comes first, you will definitely start to see the way that the threads connect. And so I would definitely say when you jump into this program, approach it from the theory first and the subject later. And you'll really start to see how it all connects a lot faster. And you won't sort of, sometimes I heard other students and even felt myself like, what is connecting all of this stuff together? It's all the theory. And that would be my thing I wish I knew from the get-go.
That's really interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that speaks to the fact that, gender historians cover such a broad range, don't they, of topics, of periods. They can be working within different disciplines. So what is it that unites us all as gender historians, I guess? And it's that shared ethos in that we, that we're all using, so perhaps feminist, queer, decolonial, trans methodologies. It's that body of theory that we're all engaging with, and which will introduce you to, as I say, in gender politics and power, and to a degree in gender culture and text. But then, once we have provided you, I guess, with that toolbox, we then want to give you autonomy. You will come here with your own interests in terms of topics and periods. And so what we want to do is provide you with the conceptual tools, with the methodologies to enable you to really engage with your primary sources, with your materials, in the most sophisticated and the most astute way possible. So that said, though, whilst you might also come to the program with that set idea of, well, this is what I love doing at undergraduate level, and this is what I want to write my dissertation on, I have to say many students do get their heads turned by a particularly inspirational, say, research seminar or lecture from a course tutor or conversation in the coffee shop with a fellow student. So by all means come with ideas about your particular specialisms, but also keep your minds open to being introduced to a range of different topics that are sort of under research here. And I think that's one of the the big advantages of the master's program here. Okay, well, I'm keeping my eye on the questions. I don't think we will have any more before the end of the session. So I think we're pretty much about to close. So really just to end by saying, firstly, huge thank you to Moira and Hannah for joining us here today and sharing your insights and experience as students on the programme. And also to say that please do just reach out and contact me if you have any further questions. And I'll aim to get back to you as soon as possible. So as I say, I convene both programmes, so I can answer any questions really relating to the academic content of the programmes or their organisation. For more sort of pragmatic questions about admissions, then do forward your question directly to admissions. But we're here to answer any questions that you have up until your registration and enrolment in September. But thank you so much for your questions, and we really look forward to meeting you in Glasgow in September, and to working with you over the next year or 2 years on whatever topic that you end up specialising in.